everybody, and welcome to the Future of Work panel. Before I kick this panel off, we've got an amazing group of people here across lots of different industries, so I'm going to pass on to these wonderful panelists to give us a quick introduction, tell us about the organization you work for and your roles. Kelly, let's start with you.
Good morning, everyone. Kelly Fladger. I'm currently the Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer for Haverty's Furniture. I also lead our ESG practice for the organization. Have had multiple senior level roles within multinational companies, and I'm just glad to be here today.
Great. Kyron?
Hi, everybody. Wonderful to be here. My name is Kyron O'Mahony. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Inclusion and Accessibility Labs. And we focus on digital accessibility and making sure that we can create a digitally equal globe. Grew up in Ireland, as you can probably tell from my accent. Still living there. I'm legally blind, maybe 18% of normal vision, so I'm hoping to bring some kind of unique perspectives and lived experiences here today. So wonderful to be here.
Lovely to have you. I think Toyan?
Good morning. My name is Toyan Julian. I run a company that, my company's name is Hartman's House, which I named after my father. And I run a company that assists musicians, artists to bring corporate structure to whatever they're doing, because one of the things that very creative people lack in their companies many times is the thoughts of corporate structure. A lot of them are around people that they grew up with, and most of those people have high school educations. So you have people with enormous wealth relying on people that don't necessarily have the corporate structure to allow them to grow into multi-million, multi-billion-dollar companies. And currently my main client is TI, so I serve as a chief business officer for Harris Family Legacy, which is the overarching arm of his corporations, and then I'm also his chief of staff.
Welcome to all of you, and I should introduce myself. I'm Jaylan Griffiths, the Global Head of Purpose at NASDAQ. And so sticking on that, I have a question for all of my panelists. NASDAQ, where I work, we are a purpose-driven organization. Our purpose is to advance economic progress for all. And you see that filtered through everything we do throughout the organization, whether it's our brand, our culture, it's infused there, it's our business strategy, how we engage our clients and communities. So my question for all my panelists is this. Obviously, it's clear that each of you take the same pride in instilling purpose in everything you do. So can each of you tell me a little bit about why it's so important for companies today to lead with a values-based culture? Toyan, I'm sorry, Kelly.
Well, I'll start.
You're right there. Go. That's fine.
Well, I'll just kind of shift that and say I don't think it's just companies. I think entrepreneurs and small businesses, from a values-based perspective, I think those are your levers and you're measuring your key business indicators on are you still on task with your purpose. So as you're, as an entrepreneur, a company, or a large company or small, as you've defined your purpose, your values then make sure on how you're aligned and if you're shifting against that or not. And if that shift happens, is it based on the growth that you've projected or what your purpose was? If not, then you need to either reframe your purpose or you need to reevaluate how you're gauging your values.
Kyron?
I think how I would look at that is I consider myself extremely lucky. I literally fell into a computer science degree, and technology has enabled me to overcome so much in my own personal day-to-day life. But and I worked in corporate sector for many, many years, and you see there's sometimes very unclear leadership values, and there's a lot of talk about things like. But one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, look at the people that are succeeding and try and emulate them. And one of the things I noticed originally was that the best managers in the world listen to people and they let them succeed. But as I grew into more of a leadership position and started my own company, who I really focus on that diversity piece and that inclusion piece. And what I found is the unique perspectives that your team can bring based on their own paradigm and how they look through life is the best culture that you can strive for. So we keep our mission very, very simple. We want to make the world digitally accessible. And then I let my team focus on that through their own perspectives. And that's something that I believe has been a real cultural success in IA Labs.
And I think, Toyan, I want to ask you had the last question. I think certainly as you say that, Karen, it's so interesting because the purpose truly is the why we do what we do as companies, but as individuals as well. And when you have that purpose, that really just kind of, it's the tie that binds it all together. And it can be so fulfilling for an individual as well as a company.
Yeah, 100%.
I think as I look at how we run Harris Family Legacy, one of the things we try to do is really use minority-owned and female-owned businesses. And one of the things that I always tell people is it's probably going to cost you more. But there's the human factor that people have to take into account. You know, sometimes, sure, will we pay 2 cents more for something because we're using a small family-run business? Probably. But you know, if you can do it and you can afford it, you have to understand you're moving the culture and society forward by allowing these small businesses to grow. And a lot of places, when they look at these big companies, say, I'm going to do it just like them, a lot of big companies don't take the people factor into it. And because we also have a charity which focuses on stopping the school-to-prison pipeline and things like that, it's really important to us to give these opportunities where they're needed. So, you know, will you pay more because you're going with, you know, what you really feel in your heart? Probably. But, you know, at what cost and what value is that?
Absolutely. So, Tyann, I want to stick with you thinking about that and how that manifests itself in the relationship with work. Obviously, you know, even though it feels like the early days of the pandemic feels like so long ago, it actually wasn't that long ago. But it did give us the opportunity to shift attitudes towards work and what work really actually meant as well. So, you know, I know this is something you're passionate about. Tell us, how has that shifted your relationship with work? And really, what can businesses do? And how have you helped your employees grow in this new and, quite frankly, ever-changing digital space?
One of the things, I'm going to bring up a photo. So one of the things I'm going to talk about quickly, and it sounds like it's not relevant, but it really is my mother was born in 1932. And when she was a young child, there were horse and buggies around. So can I get my photo, please? So this is my mom. At 85, she got an iPad. And she struggled with it at first, but now this is her and her childhood friend in Germany, where my mother is able to show her photos of all her grandchildren. And can I get the video? Quick video.
Gabriella Barbara Hartman.
Where?
Kaylee Ann Harvey. Hadley Elizabeth Hathaway. Caroline Grace Heil.
There she is.
Riley Higgs. Elizabeth Annalie Higgs.
So she was able to attend my niece's graduation during the pandemic. And I show that to show you, she was 85 when she got an iPad. 85. This is a woman that rode in a horse and buggy. Like, to her, she was like, part-time job was at the stable, you know. So I say that to say, as we evolve into this new terrifying world of AI that everybody is scared of, and all these new places, that if you really look at it, you can do it. Everybody can do anything they set their mind to. Everybody is here to learn how to do everything they need to do. At my company, we train people and allow them and give them the grace to go into new spaces. So I asked one of my employees if I could give the example of his job, and he said that was fine. So we have somebody who's our video commissioner. What video commissioners did at record labels is they commissioned your music videos. They went, they hired people, they got everything set up for a $100,000 music video that we used to do back in the day when labels would pay for everything. Now, long form video, as we call it, is not the thing anymore. It's TikTok, it's short form, it's Instagram. So now I'm shifting him to that, and I'm giving him the grace and the time to learn how to do that. And I think it's important, if you're an employer, to give your staff the grace to learn the new space they need to be in. And everybody can learn it. That's the biggest thing I think everybody should take away. Everybody can learn everything they need to. And you just have to be fearless about it.
You want to jump in, Karen?
Yeah, I think I was a similar situation. My mum is if she actually knew I said her age on stage, I think she might. So she's a similar age, let's say, and has an iPad. But I think what I'd like to say is my very first day in a computer science degree, just to give people some perspective, I was basically struggled through education because my eyes would get tired. I couldn't read materials. So imagine trying to go through education and you can't actually see the board, you can't read the materials. Then I started a computer science degree and my entire world changed. So literally I use an iPhone. It's the most important tool that I have in my pocket. I literally use it to read my daughter her bedtime stories because I can't see the text in the book, all the way through to in my employment career. So what I'd love everyone to take away today, in terms of employment, is technology is probably the single greatest enabler for people. And I know technology can also create a lot of fear. And I do agree completely, and it's about giving people that opportunity and that time to explore it. It's so important. So what I would suggest, from a purely digital accessibility point of view, to make sure that you're creating a digitally equal workplace, is to allow people the opportunity to explore. And you'll find that it can overcome so much when you remove the fear. And it's not always about accessibility. It's moving from allowing people to use something, but to use it in the same way as everyone else. And that can take a little bit of time. But the challenges aren't insurmountable. They can be overcome. And I'd like to think that, if people take that theme away from today, from my own conversation, that you embed that into your culture and allow technology to be inclusive.
Wonderful. And I think, part two of that, I guess a question to any of you really is like, what can leaders do? I think you've touched upon it, Toyon and Kyron, by saying, allow them the space to learn, give them that space. Another piece though is, how can leaders really help in this new digital space, encourage a healthier work-life balance? Because I think one of the parts is, from a digital access perspective, we can be available for work all the time. And I think, certainly over the last few years, we saw that. What can they do to really build that better balance while still obviously encouraging the space to learn and do things?
Well, I'll say in my career in leading talent management and talent development, I've had this philosophy, and it isn't necessarily always exact, but it's really around the 70-20-10. You want 70% of that on the job, face-to-face learning, and then you want 20%, which is, technology enabled. And then 10 to where it may be where you have to go get certifications, where you have to go directly to a conference like this or to a forum. But with technology, with AI, that number is going to shift from a technology-enabled perspective. And I know that's what Kieran's working on with Kyron, with his organization. So I think that shifts there, and I think companies are starting to invest more on the technology-enabled component to where team members can actually access that learning online and in a space that's more familiar with them. Additionally, I think what's important is, as we start to look at this shift in the business from the pandemic, I think the pandemic's generated and created a lot more entrepreneurs, where people left the workspace and said, you know what, I've taken what I learned at this corporation, and I want to do that on my own now. And I think what has to happen from diversity and inclusion, it's just a whole co-opting of things, that these individuals need to make sure that they're accessible to organizations. But organizations, even with some of the changes in legislation around affirmative action, still need to do the things that we were doing before, because it's the right thing to do and not just required by legislation.
I'm the wrong person to ask because I work 24/7. My best friend is sitting out there and she's looking at me, nodding her head up and down. But that's my choice. I choose to live that way. I'm an entrepreneur. I have chosen this lifestyle. I work in the music industry, in the entertainment industry, and I know that's kind of how the space is. But if you have people that work for you, and I have, like I said, I work in the music industry, and sometimes I'll call my head of A&R at 2 in the morning, and because someone called me and said, is this record cleared? To remember when they ask for days off, to remember when they go on vacation, when they need their space, I'm taking a wellness day, let them take wellness days, leave them alone. Figure out, tell everybody, this person is untouchable this day, just leave them alone. I cannot tell you how much better the staff works after you give them like 2 days to go to a spa and you didn't bother them at all and they come back refreshed rather than just badgering them the whole time. I think it's hard. I think that technology has made us so accessible that somebody feels it's okay to call you at 2 a.m. because their idea just popped in their head at that moment. I've also said to my staff, start writing me an email before you text me, and if you realize it can wait till tomorrow, do it tomorrow. But I think texting has become instant gratification. So it's also a bit of like saying, hey, do you really need this answer right now? Or is the company that you're responding to not even going to be open till 9 a.m. so you could call me tomorrow morning at 8:30?
It's funny. I think texting is almost like it's that stream of consciousness, and it's back where you used to have, maybe some people still do, the notepad and pencil by your bed. Oh, I've got an idea. I want to. You quickly jot it down before you forget it. Now you have texting, and it's just like, while I have it, and it's just that constant, and it is that multiple text sometimes is a stream of consciousness versus take the time to write it down, think about it, and then choose when to send it. I think it's interesting what you say. I agree with that work-life balance, and I think it's so important to see leaders do that. When your leadership is giving you the time or taking the time and not bothering you, that's crucial. I remember in the early days of the pandemic where our own CEO made an introduction to me, needed me to take over and do something, but very clearly said, she's out of the office. She'll get back to you when she's back in next Monday. Very clearly stating, don't expect an answer from her now, and kind of subliminally telling me, don't respond right now. Take your time, but when you are back, I want you to deal with this.
This is something, we're based out of Ireland. We've a team that's growing, and it's really important for me personally as that leader to try and do it. And I struggle the same. I tend to be online a lot. I'm tend to thinking a lot about different things and how we're going to grow our company. And we're the same as any startup. We have ambitions to change the world, and we believe in it. So, and ultimately, as a leader in a company, I want to remove as many barriers for people as possible to succeed. And we talk about this all the time, work from home, work in the office, collaboration versus non-collaboration, and again, it really just comes down to giving people the tools that they need to succeed. And in some cases, we've had conversations where people needed a more flexible environment, and flexibility is an incredible word, isn't it? Like when people are achieving what they need to achieve and they're bought into the goal, as I said earlier, it all becomes easier, and I think as any manager or leader or entrepreneur, you want everyone around you to succeed, because then you'll succeed. And if that's what you focus on, I think ultimately your path and your journey to that is correct from the outset.
So staying on that train of thought, and Kelly, you mentioned, you brought up diversity, equity, and inclusion. And obviously, we saw a lot of greater emphasis on that a few years ago. How are companies, what are they doing to ensure that there is still that same emphasis, that it's still very important? Because really thinking through, what else can they do to maintain those efforts and ensure that DE&I is authentically integrated into corporate culture and also the hiring practice to make sure it's a fully encompassed idea?
Well, I'm going to be transparent. I don't think after George Floyd, I think there was a huge emphasis on organizations making sure that was a part of their culture. And again, with legislation that's happened over the last couple of years, I don't think that companies are still living by that aspirational aspect that they presented out there. And I won't just speak from a representation standpoint. I think from DE&I, I think it's inclusive of all, and meaning people with disabilities. And I think what's happened is that organizations, based on the legislation, have kind of started to trend away from that. And I think what they can continue to do, though, is, again, continue to do the right things, but also making it more around the belonging components of it. So not only bringing people in, but they feel like they belong. So just don't invite people to the dance. You have to ask them to dance. If you ask them to dance, sometimes you have to play the type of music that they like. So I think it just has to be holistic. I think we need to look at that summarily on not only just representation of black and white, Asian or male, female, but it also goes on to disability. It also goes to, religion and being acceptable to that, and then understanding how that really, drives, again, the bottom line. And I think we just need to kind of think about it expansively like that.
So let me talk a little bit about statistics. Not going to go too long, if that's okay. But there's one specifically that really resonated with me. So a survey of the top 1 million websites in the world. If you look at those and you say, well, how many of those are actually usable by people with disabilities. It is less than 2%. So what I always say to people, and I fully agree, the inclusion starts with how do you join the company? How do you gain access to that employment? And you have to start right from, look at all of your entry points. So if there's such a low percentage of websites out there that are usable by people with disabilities, that means that people don't have financial freedom. Obviously, we're all here because it's a hugely important topic. They don't have, from an entertainment point of view, from a pure, utility point of view, setting up a access to data, it all becomes important because you need to buy it online. So what I think is important is that giving people that opportunity to get in the door, and it starts on multiple points, but my focus is particularly on can we create that door and make it as easy as for people to get the job in the first place. And I think, what I would say is I've never met an engineer, developer in my life that didn't want to make a piece of code digitally accessible. And once you recognize that there's a journey there that we need to do, and every year I'm hoping that 2% will go to 3%, go to 4%, and we'll see a natural, trend of people with disabilities applying for the role, being able to get the job. And then you'll see the counter side of that when we all see that, when you have a workforce that is DE&I and it becomes a much more enjoyable and holistic place to succeed in.
So we've talked a lot about the pandemic and all the things that have changed as a result of it. I want to move over now to what it has potential to be the next big shift for work and the future of work, which is the role of AI and the rise of AI. So there is a major opportunity, we know, for AI to completely transform work and the way we work and the way we live. Kyron, I want to start with you. How do we ensure that the opportunities created by AI are accessible for all? And, for everyone as well, what guardrails do we need to have in place to prevent AI from reinforcing biases or increasing the digital divide?
I think I really have two hats for that question.
Tell us both of them.
Yeah, okay. So the first one is, as someone, a technologist, my instant reaction is, how can I use that to create incredible products? So we've looked at this quite heavily in inclusion and accessibility labs. And ultimately, as I said, we are a tech startup. So, being able to leverage tools. And ultimately, AI is just another tool, So we're looking at it quite heavily around how we can make it an enabler for people with disabilities. So let me tell you, I have never been more excited as a technologist about the possibilities of AI. And some of the things that we're looking at behind the scenes, which I can't talk about yet, but we have some really exciting things happening in that space. And I think, like my original point, technology is this huge enabler, and I think AI will be part of that. But if I put on my second hat for a second, people with disabilities, are still fighting to live in a digitally equal world. So as technology progresses and it innovates and it moves so fast, what I really want to be, sitting here today and letting people know is that let's not leave people with disabilities behind. Let's create an inclusive world through technology. And, with generative AI, I think there is that possibility there. But let's embed that inclusive practice right from the outset. And I think if we do that and it works for everyone, and the definition of done is when it works for everyone, there is nothing to fear.
Diane?
So I think one thing to remember, because AI is that scary word out there, and everybody saw that freaky robot out there. I don't know about y'all, but that freaky robot freaked me out. And everybody's thinking iRobot and Terminator and all these crazy things. The thing to remember, and I actually, way back when I went to college with that man right there, I have a degree in computer science and in artificial intelligence. The thing to remember is these things are created by people. Somebody is programming them. Somebody programmed the sinks not to recognize darker hands when we put our hands under to turn the water on. Somebody programmed that. We have to get into the minds of the programmers to remember that we need to be included. If you don't get to them, because they're telling these are still machines. They just are told what to do. So if the programmer, who is a human being, doesn't think the way that we're talking about, that's when you get AI that doesn't think the way we need it to. So it's very important as we're at college teaching these kids to program, or we're some of you running companies that teach people to program, or working with a company that is asking you for your opinion, to remind them to look at the rainbow of people that there are in this world, all shapes, sizes, abilities, disabilities, everything, and make sure that whatever they're programming into that machine takes all of that into account.
Well, I'll say it from two sides. I'll say from, being a part of a publicly traded company. Most publicly traded companies are going to do two things when they start to save money. And so AI is going to take away some jobs, but not most. Actually, what it'll do is it'll transform a job, as opposed to someone necessarily, hey, I have to coalesce all of this customer feedback. AI will be able to do that for them. And maybe that puts them in a greater selling position. But the two things that companies do when they reduce costs and start to save money, the first thing they do is called shareholder return. So they're going to give out dividends, and they're also going to do stock buybacks, because that's what they do for the investor. The other thing they're going to do is they're going to do capital expenditures. They're going to try to grow the company with those cost savings. So I think AI is going to help that, and in doing that, generates opportunities. On the other side of it, I think for those that are in here that are entrepreneurs, is really finding the niche in that space that AI is going to open up. And for those that are creatives and so on, creatives don't have the ability necessarily to handle all of these administrative day-to-day tasks. AI will assist that for them. If you're an entrepreneur in the future, AI, if not already, is going to be able to write a business case for you to take to a bank. It's also going to show you, case studies and those guidelines that say, hey, these are the things that most individuals that have gotten loans from banks, this is what your business case needs to look at. So I'm very optimistic about it. But again, I go back to Tuan's side. It also has to go back to making sure that the developers that are, building these algorithms and those things like that come from a diverse view and a representative view of it, because that's where you get into hiring practices, because it only looks at people that are successful, and those individuals don't look like the general market. They won't get into the hiring process, but I'm very optimistic about it.
I have one more thing to say, too. I know a lot of you are entrepreneurs, so I'm going to just use an example. Let's pretend I make candles, and that's my business. They haven't developed a robot yet that can smell, so you're still going to be able to make the candles and do your craft. But they have developed AI that can tell you this many people like vanilla, and this many people prefer lavender, and that can help you decide which direction to go with the things that you do. There is always going to be a human factor in what we do, and I think that's important. So whatever your business is, think about how AI is that tool. It's like a calculator. I still remember, sorry I'm old, but I remember writing out math and not having a calculator. So, but now everybody uses a calculator. It's much faster. It didn't necessarily replace something you were doing, except for it made it a lot shorter. So to me, AI can be a tool that you as an entrepreneur use to bounce your books, to do the things that take time away from you finding that special vanilla in Madagascar that's going to make your candle the best in the world. So I think really thinking about it as a tool that can help you as an entrepreneur, that's really important.
I absolutely agree, and I think it's time saving. It'll also allow you to learn a different skill while it takes over something that you used to spend time doing. And I think with the human element too, Toyan, you gave an amazing example, and Kelly, even in yours, you can churn out, write me the best business case proposal for me to go and get a loan. But in order to differentiate yourself, because they're going to iron out a kind of a rote business case, the human element, you have to then put your own spin on it, your secret sauce kind of thing, to then take it through. So it's going to help you with the building blocks, but you have to have the human eye on it to go, I now need to differentiate myself from the next person. That's where you come in. I'm conscious of time. We've got a few minutes. I want to open it up to the audience. I've got a few other questions too, but I would say don't be shy. Any questions you have for our panelists? Okay.
What I would like to know is, what are your thoughts on virtual work or hybrid work? I understand that if you have stores, you need people there, but there's still headquarters. And from my research, CEOs, and those are like, kind of think we need to go back into the office. We don't want to. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Remote work is like an accordion. So if you remember, before the pandemic, it was kind of like this. And then once the pandemic hit, it was like this. And now leaders are looking for collaboration and bring it back in, so it's coming back in. But I don't think what's happening is that it's going to go all the way back in. I think, things like Zoom and Teams were integral in making sure that companies continue to do business during the pandemic. So it was a high use of that. But now again, so what's out there is going to come back in. I think it's going to be, in my opinion, I think it's going to be on the employees' side. I think what we have now is that because people didn't want to go back into the work, they're, going and using their entrepreneurial hat because they like the freedom from working from home and those things like that. But just like Tion was talking about, from a marketing perspective, companies' employee value proposition is really what's going to be how do they identify and bring in talent. So if, at Haverty's, we're 1 day a week from home, If you want to work more, then we're not for you. We know that we're missing out on talent because we don't offer that much more. At some point in time, if everybody's, on a focus that I need to be at least 2 to 3 days from home, we'll eventually have to adapt as a company. And I think it's really finding the organization that's best for you as an individual. But I also feel like ultimately employers or people like that are the marketplace. And so that's really what's going to drive remote work or accessibility of where you're working from.
Karen, can I weigh in?
Okay. I was going to say, for me, it's justify that you can do your job at home. Tell me that you can do your job at home. Now, there's some things like that you have to go in and collaborate with people. Like when we listen to music in the studio, we've tried it through Zoom. This isn't the same. But if you can come to me and say, you know what, these tasks that I do on my job on a regular basis, I can actually get them done at home because here's how I'm going to do it. Here's, can we try it out for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, see if it works, and then keep going. I think that the right way to approach it is really go to the people that are paying you to do a certain task and say, this task that you're asking me to do, I can do at home, and here's why. And here's how I'm going to do it. And I'd love to give it a try. And I think if you have a reasonable employer and you say, I'd like to give it a 2 week, 3 week, whatever try, they know happy employees do better work. So they'll allow you to try it. They may say, you know what, if I start it with you, I have to start it with everyone. There's always that, but it doesn't hurt to ask. But I really think it's important to not just say, I'd like to work at home for 3 days, but to say, here's why I can work at home for these 3 days. Because 50% of my job is this, and this is some stuff that I can do at home.
Karen?
So I was just going to give an example of us in Inclusion Accessibility Lab. So as mentioned, we're a tech startup. And in every tech startup, you're constantly trying to find money, you're trying to build, you're trying to invest as much as you can into the business and grow it. And just to let people know what our setup is. So we're based in Dublin in Ireland, which is the capital city. Our chief technology officer lives in a country cottage in Mayo, which is a very remote area of Ireland. And he literally, goes out for a walk every day, and that's what he wanted. And that's incredible. We have our development team based out of Ukraine, and they approached it and said, we really believe in your mission, and can we be on board? And I said, absolutely. All of our back-end software is built out of Morocco in Marrakesh. And I would never be able to afford the talent that I need to grow the business that I want. But that diversity and that flexibility of roles has allowed us to grow faster than I'd ever have dreamed, because we've enabled that flexibility, to Toyan's point earlier. And, we do have people that come into the office every day, and we have some people that want to work from home more, and it is a balance, and there's flexibility there. And I 100% agree is that you're delivering on your role, you're delivering on the objectives, and it doesn't really matter then where people work, because it creates that efficiencies, particularly from the perspective of, I never realized I was an entrepreneur until someone told me just before this session, but from the perspective of a newly entrepreneur, you can do these things, and there's ways to enable success, and I think that remote piece is something that certainly is part of our success.
Lots of questions. Go right there quickly.
Thank you so much for this panel first, and thank you for the advice you've been sharing. My name is J.O. Benjamin. I'm here with Good Dirt Realty. We were two of the finalists that were selected by John Ho in terms of doing some affordable housing programs around the west side of Atlanta. My question to you is, what questions are you asking yourself right now in your career, whether that's personally or professionally, that are kind of going to drive the next decisions that you're looking to make? So.
Diane, do you want to kick it off? Ah!
Of course, you put me on the hot spot.
I'm sorry.
I mean, honestly, I'll just be frank. My mother's 91 years old. I ask myself every day, how much time can I spend with her and how much can I juggle what I do, because I have an all-encompassing job that it demands all my time. And I literally have had conversations with my clients. My main client, my mother's best friend just passed away. And my mother's best friend just passed away at 93, so I spoke to my client and I said, I need to go and be with her. And he said, fine, as long as I can still call you. But it really is a question of how long can you maintain the entrepreneurial lifestyle and the need that is put on you to make your business succeed while trying to balance your family.
Kyron?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. It's pretty much exactly what I was going to say, but so I'll try and say it again just with an Irish accent. Personally, the number one thing that I challenge is that challenges me is that I have a 11-month-old today, little baby boy at home, and I have a 5-year-old girl, and sometimes the effort it takes to drive a company to grow can be all-consuming, and I have people that depend on me for salaries and wages and things like that. But finding that balance is something that I personally struggle with, and we are very open about that. I would tend to work really late, and then sometimes my wife will literally say, "You stop, like it's family time now." So trying to remember that constantly is something that I personally find very challenging. And I think that the things from a professional standpoint, when I come into work, I want to create an atmosphere in our office, and it's something that I really actively try, because I'm naturally quite an introverted person, is I want people to feel, confident, I want people to feel enabled, and I want people to have some fun when they work. And I think sometimes a former mentor of mine said that to me, is that just because the job is hard doesn't mean you can't have, a bit of fun. Or in Ireland we say a bit of crack, which is Irish for fun, not the other type of crack. Don't promote that. But so that's what we try, and that's part of what we try and do. And we it's important to think about that, and it's something that isn't really off my mind. I want people to be happy and believe in what they do when they come to the office, or not come to the office. That's the point earlier.
Well, mine is, I constantly ask myself, who am I uninhibited? And so my uninhibited self is if I remove all the barriers and constraints of life and those things like that, who am I authentically? So if money wasn't an issue, if work-life balance was an issue, those things like that, who am I? And then how do I show up there? And I constantly do a 10-year plan. Here's where I want to be. And what do I need to do by year 5? What do I need to do by year 3? And then I get to year 1, what do I need to do right now this year that gets me to 3 to 5 to 10? And then does that show up in my uninhibited self? And then when you become uninhibited, then it's really more of your authentic self. And I think that's what we all really want to truly do, is live our authentic life.
I would say you have to be your most authentic self. And I think you need to focus on what you need to do and where you want to be. I mean, we come to work, you have to like what you do. As an entrepreneur, as someone who works in the corporate world, you have to like what you do, because you spend most, and who you do it with, and the why you do what you do, which is the purpose piece of it, because you spend most of your time there, whether you're working from home or whether you're working in an office. It takes up a lot of the brain space. So to the panelist's point, how do you be your most authentic self at home and at work? How can you focus so that you get done what you need to get done at work, so that then you can build the balance of focus, balance, authenticity, so that you have the work-life balance where you're able to kind of think through where your next stage is. So that's kind of the advice I would give, those kind of 3 areas to really kind of hone in and focus on.
Thank you so much.
Last question. We're already over. I'm getting a look of like, oh, so last question.
Very quick. Excellent. The question is very quickly. In the next 5 years, what percentage of your company you think will be taken by AI?
Oh, that was done. Do you want to say one more time so everyone can hear you say it?
What percentage of your company you think will, within the next 5 years, will be AI? And wildest idea, remember the iPhone took over the world in less than 3 years.
Yeah, I don't think, I'll say this for us, I don't think I think maybe 10 to 15%, but I don't think it'll be, taking away jobs. I think they'll change. So what we have is our customer service reps right now. So again, they coalesce a lot of the data and feedback that comes back from our customers and issues. AI will assist in that. Well, what we'll do is we'll convert those customer service reps into digital sales reps. So as people go into our digital space or on our website and those things like that, they'll actually be selling, in our view, digitally as versus just taking complaints and understanding where a delivery order is. I think from an AI perspective, I think we'll see improved imaging on our websites of our products and those things like that. So I think it's actually, for us, I think it will probably create jobs. And I think for us, with the cost savings that we'll do, I think we'll kind of start to shift to more higher paying and higher skilled jobs. That's just for where we are right now.
Down the line, Kyron?
For our company, Inclusion and Accessibility Labs, I think there will be zero changes or 0% in terms of from an employee standpoint. I think what we will look at really heavily is how we can use AI to be that enabler for people with disabilities. So, and we'll also, at the moment, our development team use AI tools all the time to write code because it's a starting point. So really, internally at the moment, it's more, we see it more as 2 things: as a tool to create efficiencies, and that can be anything from accounting software to how code is written, or as a reference tool, and then also how we use it to make the products that we're building for people with disabilities better.
Toyan?
I'm going to say 50% of my stuff is going to be taken over by AI, but thank God it's going to be the boring crap like registering songs on ASCAP and all that stuff that none of my team wants to do. And then I'm going to be able
Freeing you up to do the fun stuff.
And then I'm going to be able to use them to listen to more music and come up with more creative ideas and things like that. So I think the jobs will be the same number of people employed or the same types of things. We're going to evolve them. We're not going to replace them. So that's where I am.
I've got loads of questions more to come here, but I think we have to call it on there. So all that's left for me to do is say thank you. Thank you to all the panelists. Great conversation. And thanks everyone in the audience.